this computer. Okay, viewer, welcome to, I think we're up to episode 19 of Connection Over Coffee with the Loneliness Guy. And we are honoured, I'm honoured to be joined today by my friend Steve Seidel, who you are in Denver, right?
Correct, yes.
Right.
Now
right. I am. Yeah. So, yeah, Denver via way of Guam, via way of Chicago.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Steve, welcome. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I appreciate you having me.
And look, just for you, viewer, as a special, this is going to be a long recording if I'm, not speaking properly. But as a special treat, that Steve is not feeling altogether here today. He's a little dusty, as we would say, and after, so it's Sunday afternoon there, it's Monday morning here, so Steve is feeling a little bit dusty. So let's be nice to Steve, but what was that?
I said, please be nice.
Yeah. We're not going to be nice.
It's funny. I used to have a boyfriend in Chicago. His nickname for me is Dusty. So.
Well, it was meant to be.
So that's perfect.
It's like coming full circle for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All moments in life have led to, me saying that you're feeling dusty today. All right. So let's get cracking into this episode, which is on the gift of loneliness as we're coming up to Christmas.
Yes.
I need to just write one thing down. Okay. So I don't know about you, but the end of the year has felt like it's just sort of come racing on. And yeah, so I just need to remember to say a few words at the end of the episode. So I just made a note of that. All right, let's crack on, hey?
Let's go.
All right. Hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the Loneliness Guy. Today we're having a chat about the gift of loneliness with my friend Steve Seidel. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve. That's probably not what you...
You've thrown me. This episode.
Hi, everybody.
This episode is all about destigmatizing loneliness and promoting authentic connection for gay men globally. It contains content relating to the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anyone in earshot, now's the time to move on. I'm going to go get the coffee sorted. So how about you and Steve find us a table and I'll be right with you. All right. I am going to keep all of that in, all of that banter in, because that's actually really funny. Yeah, so we'll just go with that, hey? All right. You good?
I think so. I'm just falling apart.
nothing
I'm like a Madame Tussauds. I'm just like melting in front of you. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we're being kind, remember, viewer. So about the dustiness. All right. Here we go. If this is the first episode that you've joined me for Connection Over Coffee, I want to say hi and welcome, and just want to take a moment to recognize the bravery as a gay man who is experiencing loneliness, and the bravery that you have shown by simply pressing play on this episode. So whether you're listening via the podcast or watching on YouTube, I want to recognize that bravery because there's such a stigma around loneliness that we can feel like we're a failed human or any other kind of negative, awful, yucky feeling within us that makes us resist wanting to engage on the thoughts and feelings of loneliness. So the mere act of you pressing play deserves recognition, and I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm really proud of you. And if you're a return listener, return viewer, a huge welcome back. It's so awesome that you're here. And whether you're a first-time listener or a return listener, we're going to have, I just know, a great conversation with Steve about the gift of loneliness as we lead up to Christmas. And this being the last episode of Connection Over Coffee with the Loneliness Guy for 2020, before we jump in, I want to say a huge thank you to you, my audience, wherever you are in the world, for being here and engaging with my work, whether that's through my blog at The Loneliness Guy or lonelinessguy.com, or through the podcast, engaging on social media, however you're choosing to engage with my work. I want to say a huge thank you. And I want to say thank you to all my guests before I know that I'll forget at the end of this episode, and say thank you in advance to my guests, just in case I forget to say it at the end. But Steve, this whole episode, right, is about the gift of loneliness as we're coming up to Christmas. And as I said off air, that, you know, the thoughts and feelings of Christmas are, you know, such that we can feel the burden of expectation that we need to live up to, you know, the hallmark version of Christmas. We need to, you know, all those Netflix movies where, you know, things come together right at the end and everyone has a happy, joyous Christmas, and, you know, fires are burning, chestnuts roasting, etc., which makes no sense when you live in the Southern Hemisphere, let's just say, where it's summer. But yeah, so there's a whole heap of burdens around Christmas that we should. We're going to dig into those shoulds, but I want to hear from you. Who are you, Steve? And what do you do?
So I am Dusty. And so first of all, I want to say thank you. I didn't realize I was going to be the last guest for 2020.
Yeah,
that is quite an honor, since 2020 has gone on for about 13, 14 years now.
It still feels like March. It's still March, right?
It just won't end. I remember the good old days of Tiger King, and back when the pandemic and staying in our house was still a novelty. And it was like, oh my God, we're staying at home and we get to drink and watch trashy Netflix. And now it's like, just, can this be over? But I am, so I've been in the health and wellness industry for 20 plus years, which clearly means I started when I was like 5. I've been a cycling instructor for 20 plus years. I managed the health and wellness department for a YMCA in Chicago. And then about 4 years ago, I said, I'm going to be a flight attendant, because I always wanted to be one since I was 12 years old. And I fooled an airline into hiring me. But now, because of COVID, I've been furloughed. So I'm getting back into the one constant thing I've always had in my life, and that's my faith in and love of the health and wellness industry. There's so many people that can benefit from it, and I love watching people make transformations and change their lives through just taking care of themselves a little bit better. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, and listener, viewer, if you don't follow Steve, we'll get into you know, where you can find him at the end, but make sure that you do follow him on social media. His content is always thought-provoking, always entertaining. And one of the things I love most about Steve is that he is as much about coffee and the importance of coffee as I am. And so, you know, there's often content about, you know, Steve and coffee. And we know, Steve, that, you know, connection happens over coffee, right? Or, you know, a nice warm beverage. So, and that's essentially how we've connected, isn't it? Over social media.
It is. And if you want to spend the rest of this interview just saying nice things about me, I'm loving it so far. So. Keep going. Keep going.
No. I've decided to be extra special kind to you for this chat. Being,
that's right.
you know, the dustiness and all of that of you know of
just be kind. You don't need to wear the kid gloves, but
no, I think one thing. So, Steve, we've had, you know, in preparing for this chat over the last few days, and indeed over the past weeks, you know, we've been thinking, you know, of, you know, the gift that is loneliness, and listener, viewer, I need to say this, like the whole gift of loneliness idea came in my mind when I wrote a blog post for Steve on loneliness back, I want to say like August, September or something like that, that you published on your blog. And I, the last paragraph in that blog post was all about, you know, you mightn't want it and it feels like it's wrapped in shit, but the loneliness that you're feeling is a gift. And that thought has been a recurring theme through my work at the Loneliness Guy all through 2020. And no one wants it. No one wants to feel loneliness. No one wants to wrestle with their loneliness. No one wants, you know, it's the gift that nobody wants. And being Christmas, I have developed this kind of, you know, imagery, and I'm looking at a Christmas tree now, where, you know, down the back in the corner where it's all like collect like dust bunnies and, you know, poorly wrapped. Not your house, Steve, but
you just can't see it.
Yeah. No judgment if there is, but, you know, in that really, you know, cobwebs, all that kind of stuff is like the gift that might have been under Christmas trees for years past, but this Christmas is unique. It's very different in our lifetimes where, you know, depending on where you are in the world, regular Christmases that we're used to might be a memory, feel like a distant and uncomfortable memory compared to the reality that we're experiencing right now. But working through that whole gift of loneliness perspective angle, you know, now this is the season. This is the Christmas to reach in behind and with kindness, self-love, etc., accepting and opening that present. So let's do that together, and let's have a chat with Steve about that. Steve, how do you accept your loneliness when it comes calling?
Well, first of all, I don't answer. No. How do I accept loneliness? I feel like it's just, I guess over the years, it's something I've learned to just sort of sit with, if that makes any sense, instead of trying to, I think you even said it in that post that you wrote for me, how we always just, there's so many things we try to do to distract us from that feeling of loneliness, whether it's work, food, alcohol, drugs, sex, any combination of those, whatever it takes to distract us from that feeling, that shit feeling that we feel lonely. So I think just learning how to sort of sit with it and be okay with it, and maybe play around with it a little bit and dig around with, why do I feel this way? What's going on? So learning to sit with it and learning to play with it a little bit, and discovering a little bit more about ourselves as to why we feel that way.
How do you sit with it? And specifically, like I'm emphasizing there, how do you sit with it?
How do I sit with it? Uncomfortably. I mean, it's not something that, I mean, the tendency is always there to pick up the phone and start scrolling, or go to the kitchen and find something to eat, or whatever it is. So I don't know. How do I sit with it? Can you hear that? Is that,
Yeah.
sorry. I don't know what's happening. I think the radiator's getting ready to blow up. Just learning to sort of sit and be okay with it, and not constantly feeling the need to distract myself with whatever medium it is that's available.
I think it's a really important point, both in the asking of the question, which I did, the answering of the question, which you did for you, but it's also it goes to the point that it can be really, it's an easy thing to say. So much it's not an easy thing to say. It is an easier thing to say, to sit with it, allow it to be, etc., whatever the word's going to be, like to accept it, whatever we're going to say. But it's the doing of that where it actually gets quite, it gets hard. It gets really, really difficult, because what that looks like is sort of amorphous, ill-defined. You kind of know it when you're in it, but you're not really quite sure where it starts. And I have the visual imagery of a cloud here. Like, you can see it, but where exactly does the cloud start? How does it start? But when you're in the midst of it. So sitting with it, allowing it to be, etc. That's actually, well, it's frankly the only advice that you can give. But what that looks like is unique to the individual, right?
Unique to the individual, yes. And I think too, like we were saying, just exploring that space a little bit, exploring that feeling a little bit. Like, so honestly, like, probably you being a diplomat and your feelings of loneliness around that, I think being a flight attendant was one of the loneliest experiences I've had. And even though I'm furloughed, I can't wait to go back to it. But I mean, you're flying around in planes all day with strangers, and then you go to an empty hotel room in some strange city at night. And so you learn, I guess, to just sort of, I don't know, maybe it's not so much sitting with it as it is learning to sort of become your own best friend.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to ask another question of how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think, yeah, becoming your own best friend goes to one of the points that goes all the way through my work, which is about connecting to yourself. Because, it sounds trite, sounds, something that we would find on, the inside of a greeting card, but that is actually the key, I feel, like, very strongly, and so much so that, I've started the Loneliness Guide based on this, is that the connection that we need to others, to ideas, to concepts, to other people, to places, all start from when we feel connected to ourselves. And so, yeah, you can find yourself in an empty hotel room night after night after night, after being surrounded by people who you don't know. And, engaging with them, but it's the essential, can I get you something to drink? Can I, chicken, beef, peanuts? You worked for.
I don't know why the internet doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. It's hardly the experience, and I mean we can extrapolate that to many other things that we do in life, many other occupations, where the conversations, we have so many conversations, but they're the same conversations, they're the same, and they never go below the surface. And I'm sure, it's a very rare thing that, a passenger would go, you know what, Steve, looking at your name tag. So, Steve, how's your day been? What's frustrating you today? Like, no one does that, right?
No. No, they don't.
Yeah. And so, and this goes to the other point through my work of like loneliness is not only being alone and not being with. Loneliness is not solitude. Solitude can be a choice, but loneliness, you can be surrounded by so many people, but not have those kind of soul nourishing. You're not feeling seen, you're not feeling heard, and you don't feel like you belong.
And I know you mentioned that too in one of your articles about what you just said. Loneliness doesn't mean you're alone necessarily. You can be surrounded by friends, acquaintances, family, loved ones. If you're not making those authentic connections, it's falling short, it's falling flat.
Yeah.
You're alone in a crowd of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking a little bit about what you were asking me earlier that I couldn't quite articulate. And then you said that learning to be your own best friend is really the only way to sort of get around it and through it. And it reminded me of my favorite Peloton instructor, because she will say, she'll be leading a cycling class and we're pushing hard, and she'll hit the nail on the head by saying, this isn't complicated, but I never said it wasn't going to be hard. So the concept is simple, right? Be your own best friend. Cool. How do I do that? That's where the work comes in, and that's where it gets hard. So
yeah.
we never said it was complicated. It's simple, but it's hard at the same time. So
yeah, I'm just noting that down for the soundbite on the promos, because that is so true. That is so true. And where we have those kind of, and it can be really frustrating. It can be really, 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 really frustrating to receive the advice of, when you go, you know what, I'm actually feeling really shit within myself. Like I'm feeling like, a whole lot of lack of worth, lack of value, lack of, lack of, an abundance of lack. And just feeling generally bleh about myself. And someone on the internet, someone on a podcast, someone on YouTube, someone, a friend, a well-meaning friend, who goes, oh, well, just sit with it. You want to smash them about the head, right?
The lid on your Snapple or the tea bag from your Yogi tea, like it'll all say that same thing. And it's just like, yeah.
It's frustrating, but it's true. It's true. But and what I love just about what you shared there, Steve, is that yes, it's true, but it doesn't mean it's not complicated. Sorry, it's not complicated, but it doesn't mean it's easy to do.
And so then going further to that point, I think, without oversimplifying it or trying to give a fix-all or a remedy, I think that's a place to start looking at, okay, so I have feelings of unworthiness or feelings of loneliness or whatever it is I'm feeling. What am I doing? What am I doing to feed myself? Not with food, but what am I doing to feed myself? What am I doing to feed my soul? What was I going to say? I always used to tell clients, like, you pretty much have two choices. You have a goal and you're either moving towards it or you're moving further away from it. And so if your goal is to feel more fulfilled and more connected, what are the things that you're doing to get to that point? You know, if it's sitting around in your hotel room, binge eating and crying, that's okay. That's not really getting you towards, like, what can you do to yourself to nourish your mind and your spirit and your body that helps you feel better about who you are so you can interact with people in a more authentic way?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, you know, so simple to say, that's a lifetime, a lifetime there of getting to that place. And you know, and I say that very deliberately, that it is a lifetime, because it's not do it once and right, then done, drop the mic, or I'm out.
The work is never done. The work is
No.
never done. As long
Yeah,
as we're alive, there's work to be done.
yeah, yeah, right. And on coming back to, you know, accepting the gift of loneliness. I was speaking yesterday with Jeff, and he, like, I was saying, oh, you know, I think I might do a video on my social media, and because I realized that, you know, in scrolling through my Instagram, at the _loneliness_guy, if you don't already follow me, what the hell are you doing? But like, I realized there that there's lots of photos there of me, you know, and you know, I got a friend to take some professional photos of me, and you know, I'm looking good, feeling good, looking good in that. I don't normally look like that, let's just say, but also there's lots of photos of Jeff and me in my social media feed. And you know, if like I'm going to get into this in future content, so hold your horses. But you know, the feeling lonely and scrolling through social media, you know, we play the comparison game, and Jesse Elkins and I talked about comparisons can actually be a tool of connection as well. But you can look through my social media and go, Phil, like, why the hell is he lonely? Like, you know, he's got an awesome partner. Like, you know, you know, he's fit, he's whatever he is. Like, I'm actually tanned in that photo. It was taken at the end of last summer. And, you know, and I'm sure my friend did a little bit of photoshopping or something like that. But yeah, I'm, you know, you can scroll through there and it looks like, you know, I am showing you a highlight reel. I'm showing you some images that will get gay eyes to stop scrolling and engage on the thoughts and feelings of loneliness and get help and support on loneliness. But that thought occurred to me, and then I thought, right, you know, this is actually all of this. Steve, how I met you, how I met Jeff, how I set up 2 websites on loneliness, 2 podcasts, how I came to accept my sexuality and come out as gay and end a fantastic 20-year relationship with a woman where I was married for 16 and a half years, 2 kids, you know, who I, you know, love and adore, and it's a joy to see them work out who they are and help them put themselves into the world. Like, all of this stuff came from when I accepted my loneliness. And I, you know, and working to be that kind of authentic me, as scary, fucking scary, it's as scary as fuck, as the kids say. And I so desperately did not want to open my gift of loneliness. Like, spent years denying it, but then actually going, I think I kind of sort of might be lonely, giving myself an awful lot of wriggle room there to you know, say it is an option, not necessarily the option. But when we accept the gift of loneliness and then start to sit with it You know, sounding simple, picking up on Steve's point there. It's not complicated, but fuck, it's hard. Like, it's really hard to do it. We then start to get the connection to self, to others, and to the world outside, like to our communities, that we need as humans. So, Steve, what would you recommend, like, in getting, you know, in beginning the sit with it? What are your thoughts, you know, of like, all right, so someone finds loneliness, the badly wrapped present, you know, covered in dust bunnies and cobwebs at the back of the tree that may have been there for a little while. It probably, you know, stinks a little bit. There's flies around it. But it's time. People, you know, the listener has been brave and courageous, accepted it, started to open it, and begins to look at it and acknowledge it. What do you say then to do next?
So while you were saying all of that about being lonely and starting to deal with it, the only thing I could keep thinking in my head is this. So when you've opened that gift of loneliness, you've opened the gift of the start of the process of becoming who you truly are. Because again, I don't know how to quite articulate it, but it's just like you're fighting loneliness, but really you're learning to become your authentic self. Do you know what I mean? Like you were talking about feelings of loneliness when you were married, and it was from what I understand, it was a great relationship, but it wasn't authentic. It was predicated on a false notion that you weren't gay.
Mm.
So, right, am I somewhere in the ballpark on that? So I think that gift of loneliness is the opportunity to start looking inside and saying, okay, well, who am I? How do I show up in the world right now? And is that genuine and real? And I think if you're just running around blowing smoke up everyone's ass trying to be who you think they want you to be, you're never gonna have those genuine connections that defeat that feeling of loneliness.
Yeah, very well put. Very well put. When we think that when we have to remember our character, when we have to remember our lines, and Steve, I know you're a huge fan of Grey's Anatomy, so you know, let's just dig into that a little bit. But you know, when you know you have to remember that you know looking at you, using you as an example, Steve, like, you know, flight attendant, you know, being employed by an airline, like you're Steve in the fact that does it say Steve or Stephen on your name badge?
I think it says Dusty.
Yeah. Speak slowly.
I think it says Steve. I don't know. I haven't looked at my name tag since March. Like, that's how long it's been.
Sometimes name tags can be useful, and you know, when I'm at work, sometimes I put mine upside down so I can look down and see, you know, my
Who
name.
am I?
Yeah, I know. But that's the point. Like when you realize that you have to be, or you've gotten yourself, and you've gotten yourself into a position, and you feel that you need to remember who you're supposed to be in different circumstances in life. So, Steve, you might, you know, adopt you know, put a mask on, adopt a persona, you know, suit up and enter into the character of, you know, the flight attendant. And I think I've said this to you before, Steve, that, you know, you have an awesome voice for making cabin announcements, you know, and you know, I would feel instantly calm and reassured, and I would look forward to, you know, getting some fantastic service on my flight. But, when we enter into those kind of life situations and we feel that we need to remember, like, okay, well, I'm about to walk into work. Who do I need to be? Oh, right, entering into that character. Or I'm going home, or and being with family, so parents, or being with high school friends, and being with university, or you might call it college friends, or all these kind of we wear different characters, and it gets really complicated, because in that process, which we all do, and I'm hearing complication as a bit of a theme through this chat, Steve. But when we do that, and if we don't do it mindfully, and generally none of us does it mindfully because we do it in our adolescence and through our 20s and 30s, we suddenly have the realization, like, who the fuck am I? Like, I'm playing all these characters, but who is Meredith Grey?
Oh my God. So I started binge watching. I had never watched it, and I started binge watching it during the pandemic, or during not working and everything else. And I was like, oh, this is good. And I watched her character develop actually over the 16 seasons that I've watched. And I was like, wait a minute, what happened to Meredith Grey? Like, she's matured so much. Like, she's found her voice. She's found who she is. But going back to what you say about wearing masks and showing up differently wherever we are as gay men, that's very much that's it's not been drilled into us. I don't want to say people outside of us told us that's what we need to do, but we learned, I feel like we learned how to do that as a survival mechanism growing up. You learn to read a room like that and go, okay, this is what I need to do not to get the shit beat out of me, or whatever it is. And that never really goes away without lots of concentrated inward looking work. I feel like I still do it to a certain extent, because my dad lives way out in Western Colorado, and it's very conservative out there. Like, very conservative. And while I still remain true to myself, I do rein it in a little bit, maybe. I don't show them the whole me, And what you were saying earlier about wearing masks and stuff like that, I think at a certain point you can be authentic, and then there's a spectrum of your authenticity based on kind of what your role is. Like, this is me drunk at a bar. This is me at work. So it's a little bit different version, but I still think it can be the true authentic version of you. But Lord Jesus knows, years ago, I used to try to pretend to be straight somewhere else and somewhere else not. And that's putting on a different mask for each scenario. But again, like I said, I think it's a survival mechanism that we instinctively acquired.
It developed, and perhaps out of necessity. Not perhaps out of necessity, definitely out of necessity. Is this safe? And can I be me in this situation? And I don't think that's there's certainly many characteristics that are unique to the gay adolescent experience, but I think it's part of the adolescent experience generally. Like, we all did that.
For sure.
And being able, like, can I be me? So, because adolescence is all about fitting in, and this is something that I explored in episode 18 of Connection Over Coffee, on friendship, and what does it mean to be a friend, and how we learn to make and keep friends from when we were an adolescent, because that was the whole point that's one of the whole reasons of adolescence is learning how to get love and support from outside of the family unit. But at the end, like, we always come back and we have to pay the piper, and we are our own piper. And if we're not being who we are, we need it will spring back, and it will feel at times like, you know, the snapping back of an elastic of a rubber band around our wrist. And it will sting, it will really hurt. Other times it can be a gentle rapping at the door. It can be that dusty, dust bunny covered present under the Christmas tree that is an uncomfortable reminder that, sure, you might be successful, you might have all the money in the world, you might have the best house, you might have, you know, the holidays, you might be, you know, one of those people on social media who is constantly posting, you know, 1 week in the Greek islands and then the next year on, you know, Ibiza, or, you know, the next year in Cancun, and then the next year at the Swiss Alps, you know, for a spot of skiing. And, you know, then you know, the Great Barrier Reef, and, you know, touring the wonderful country of Australia, which everyone is going to be doing post-pandemic, right? Yeah. And, you know, wherever, like, you know, oh, hi, you know, felt cute, might delete later, or, you know, just woke up like this. You're that guy who's posting all of those, and you've got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, and, you know, the great car, like, you're living the life. And even if you're not like that guy, and you're you know, surrounded, like, you've got lots of people in your life or whatever, but something that there's an emptiness, there's a void within you, and you're not feeling that you belong to yourself. Everything around you feels fake. Perhaps that's loneliness, and not being authentically yourself.
So what I started thinking about while you were talking about all that is, if you're the person that is posting your picture here and of this, and you're doing well in business, and you're doing well in this and that and the other thing, what I started thinking about is that wheel of life that you fill out. If you've ever, I know you've had a life coach before, has sort of gotten you through some of this stuff. So I'm sure you've probably seen the wheel of life, but it gives you the opportunity to rate all the different areas in your life, like relationship, business, fun, joy, happiness, whatever. And what you'll see so often, and what I was seeing when you were saying that, is their wheel of life being completely skewed with high ratings in business and success and all that stuff, but then low ratings, lower numbers in personal fulfillment, relationships, stuff like that. And the whole goal of that is to sort of balance it all out, so that you're not at a 10 on business and a 1 on relationships. Maybe you're at like a 7 and a 6, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I have done that exercise as part of the coaching program that I did with Mike Campbell, and do with Mike now for guys. And listener, viewer, there's links on my site to access that. So it's the
what did it reveal to you the first time you did it?
Well, the first time I did it was around social, and essentially connection. Yeah, like being me. So yeah, you know, I had, you know, I was working in a job like that I'd wanted to do since I was 14, like rather like you, being a flight attendant. You beat me by 2 years. You know, and was doing it twice, like doing it for the second time. And the first time was amazing, and I was doing it in Vietnam, and it was amazing. And then doing it a few years later in Korea, and it was absolutely fantastic, but it was not as fulfilling. I did not, like, I kind of felt like I was just going through the motions, and which was not doing me the service that I needed, nor was it doing my country the service that it
anyone else. Yeah.
But and then, ironically, like I remember being so shit scared, and I'm sure, you know, Mike, if he's listening, that he will remember this. You know, I'm like, no, you know what? I'm like, oh, I'm kind of important. I'm kind of important, and this is me. This is like listener, viewer, Steve. This is me refusing the gift of my loneliness. It's like. And I remember, like, Mike called me forward and he's like, you know, I think, you know, you can do this. Like, you can, it feels like you're stepping off a cliff, but, you know, like, I'm right here. We can do this. And I remember, and I kind of, what's the guy, Ron from Anchorman? You know, I kind of feel like I sounded like him. It's like, you know, I'm kind of a big deal.
Ron Burgundy. Sorry.
There we go. There we go. You know, kind of a big deal. And you know, how's this? I don't have the luxury to be me. You know, right. I'm Australia. Like, I need to be who other people think an Australian diplomat must be like in every situation. And including in my personal life, almost especially in my personal life. And I was terrified. I'm like, you know what, Mike, when he called me, like literally on the phone, he called me forward. And I said, you know, well, look, if there's a book that, you know, or, you know, I know, it's like, can I make you know, can I give some money? Essentially, like, can I buy my way to feeling better and not having to do the work? And he saw through my bullshit. And I see this bullshit all the time. And I can call it because I'm like, hang on, that's something I would say. That's something I said. And it was bullshit. So I'm calling bullshit on that.
It's funny. I'm looking through my notes and I didn't write it in my notes. And yes, that's what kind of day I'm having. I didn't come to this unprepared. I was like, you better write some notes. Stick it to your ring light. But yeah, I didn't write it down. But you said that in that piece that you wrote for me was there's no shortcut to it.
No.
It's like an Alanis Morissette said in one of her songs, the only way out is through. Like, you can't buy it, snort it, drink it. Like, you just have to do it.
Yep.
And what is it? It sucks, huh?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, is it like Rock of My Soul? Like, so high, can't get over it. So low, can't get under it. So wide, can't get round it. I'm not going to sing. Like, I'm just going to spare everyone that.
I feel like you're getting ready to. I'm waiting for you to break out in song.
I have a microphone, let's say,
but it's very interesting.
Karaoke.
It's interesting to what you were saying, though, and I never thought about what you do as such. Like, I've never considered myself the face of the airline. I've never considered, like, I have to act like a flight attendant. But your job, inherently, that's what you're doing. You're representing your country, right? I mean,
I know.
So that's a lot of pressure to act like something that you think you should be acting like. How does an Australian, how do I represent my people?
Yeah. The awesome country. And how, and not only that, like, you know, hi, I'm Phil, I'm a high achiever. I write on and speak on all of this on The Lonely Diplomat. If anyone's, you know, if you listener and viewer are interested, lonelydiplomat.com. But, you know, like, sorry, I just caught myself there. I was about to play myself down. Like, I'm smart. Like, I'm curious. Like, I'm great at my job, and I became better at my job when I went through my loneliness, when I went through my sources of shame, including my sexuality. And that was an enormous fucking huge, like, shame swamp full of, like, I thought, monsters and things that would suck me down into the mud and I would never return. And of course,
Right.
if I read a book, if I had listened to a podcast, read a book, closed it and go, okay, right. Okay. I'm going to start walking into the shame swamp. I am going to, like, if we do that, when we do that, we like fall into sinkholes, we get into quicksand, also like trip on roots, we, all this kind of, things, like we will get there in the end, but it would feel like such a harder slog. But if we do it with someone else, especially with our loneliness, the whole point of loneliness, Steve, the whole point of loneliness, listener, viewer, is to get connection. You work through your loneliness when you do it with someone else, helping you, not leading you, because it's your loneliness to work through, but someone with you, like standing next to you, helping you work through your loneliness and your loneliness swamp, knowing that they've got a guide. And when that happened with me, and I'm not going to pretend, Steve, that it was fucking, unicorns and, I don't know, like all that. It's not. Oh, and it's still not. It's still not. It's fucking hard work, and I really don't want to do it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But, always the connection that I need to myself, to those most important to me, having identified who is most important to me and why, and to my community. And community is also like how I show up in the world, like to my job. All of that kind of, it's like this filter, like this fog filter, going back to social media, like has been removed, and I'm seeing the world in HD.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for if you listener, if you viewer, if you, Steve, are kind of going, oh God, I think this gift of loneliness at the under my Christmas tree, and I'm really scared to open it. It's like, yep, it's fucking scary. But the reason that you're scared is because it is scary. It is scary. And in the blog post, I talked about how, the gift of loneliness can be akin to opening Pandora's box. And you open Pandora's box and all these ghouls and things come flying out of Pandora's box and go, ooh, and so, yeah, it is scary. It is scary. But, they will go. And at the bottom of that gift, using the fable of Pandora's box, is hope. And that I cannot begin to say how awesome that is when you get to that hope. And for some things, like it took me a few years to like get to my sexuality and go, okay, all right, did the easy things first, but then got to the layer that was my sexuality. I'm like, all right, I've got my team around me, I've got the skills, I've got all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I know. He's like, ugh. But then got to that layer. You don't do it all at once. And then once I started going, okay, this is me, I'm unapologetically me, I started turning up in the world at work. Like I was petrified that me making changes to me would affect how I did my work. Actually, people respond to me being me in a favorable way. And I actually became much better at my job when I rocked up to work and, meetings with other countries' governments and other countries' governments' officials. Still, I had the lapel pin of the Australian flag on, and I, still, my business card had the coat of arms on it and all that kind of stuff. I was still the Australian diplomat. I was still an Australian representative, but I was me.
But you weren't setting off people's bullshit detectors anymore.
Exactly.
They realized they were dealing with you and not some version of you that you created based on someone else's idea of who you think you should have been.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you interact with how do you interact with people that you know aren't genuine? You're just like,
Yeah.
like there's not trust there. And without trust, it's whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, Steve, what's your advice? What's your advice? Like, and this, I realize that I've already asked this question earlier in this chat, but, how would you, in like, sitting with the loneliness, going back to the sitting with the loneliness and going, fuck, I need to put my gumboots on, I need to put the waders on, and right, is there a guidebook for, shame swamp walking through, or whatever, like how in the sitting with it, it's, you sit with it for a moment, but then we've got to go do, right?
Say that. What was that last part?
Yeah. So no, there was a moment of wisdom there that was very subtle. So the advice is to sit with your loneliness, but almost like it's sitting with your loneliness for essentially just a few moments. Because the sitting with the loneliness turns into, right, I need to engage with my loneliness. What's it trying to tell me? So, the sitting is very passive. The working through the loneliness is active. We need to get actively working through our loneliness there. What's your advice to someone who, is going, right, Phil and Steve's conversation, Phil's work is friggin' awesome. I'm ready. I'm ready, sounding like SpongeBob there, to not just read, to not just listen, to not just, hit like on social media. I'm ready to do something. What's your advice for doing?
My advice would be to figure out what it is you want to do. Does that make sense? So again, I think that's a simplistic answer, but the work becomes hard. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? How do you want to be? And start looking at those things and reverse engineering, say, okay, so this is what I want to do. Here I am right here. What are the steps involved in bridging that gap? How do I slowly, like you did, brought yourself to your authentic you? How do you slowly start to do that? How do you start small enough that you have success to build upon too? Because I think what I heard earlier when you were saying when it came time for you to deal with your layer of sexuality, you had already discovered through going through layers of other shit that you can do it and that you were successful and it didn't hurt you, it didn't kill you, it didn't destroy you. And so you learn through that, like, oh, actually, that was not bad. And now I'm on the other side of it and things are a little bit better. So I think I've sort of derailed a little bit, but that is, feel like what, huh?
Hardly derailed. Like you're
okay.
Very railed.
I sometimes think I have derailed and I'm just talking. But your original question was what do you do? And I think it is figuring out what it is you do for you and then figuring out the steps to get there. It's always about bridging that gap.
Yeah. And I think
and again, from my health and wellness world of working in the gyms, same sort of thing. You're 200 pounds, you want to be 150. What are the steps involved that's going to get you to that point? It's not sitting around doing a mukbang and crying about the fact that you're not at this place.
Yeah. You said that in a call that we had, and with Michael Diorio a few weeks ago. You said that to me, and working through one of the frustrations that I was having, and we were helping each other out. And you're like, where are and you want to bench 200 pounds, but you can only bench 120 now. Like, you know, sure, you can try and bench 200 pounds, but it's going to crush you. So
I'm not going to be there for it, but
yeah, exactly. And you know, next week, you know, do a set of 125, and then 2 sets of 125, 3 sets, and then, you know, slowly but surely, polka, you build it up as your strength develops.
That's just another way of saying, like we've been saying this whole time, there's no easy fix. You can't buy it, smoke it, pill it, eat it, whatever. You have to do the work, whatever it is in your life. Whether it's you want to get better on the bench, you want to lose weight, you want to be less lonely, whatever it is, that discomfort or whatever it is caused by the discord between where you're at and where you want to be, right? And you can never bridge that gap with gimmicks bullshit. It's got to be work. And it like you were saying earlier, it can be scary and hard and frightening, and 30 days where you take 2 steps forward and then the next day you stay in bed with the covers over your head because you don't want to face it or whatever. So it's a slow process, or it can be, and you have to honor that. And that's why I always tell people too, that it's very important to take a look at your wins, like celebrate those no matter how small they are, because celebrating your victories is gonna create a new, like, sort of path in your mind that's like, oh yeah, I am capable of doing things. I am capable of successes and wins and spilling shit all over my couch. So yeah.
that last one was very important. The more stuff.
But do you know what I mean? Like you can either celebrate your wins, or you can sit around all the time and go, shit, I'm still not there. I suck. And then how does that serve you? Does it? Probably not. Right?
It can be. It can, you know, either make you feel bad. It can make you feel bad and spur you into action as well. It's like, right, you know, and it's that the spur into action that we can get stuck in a numbing cycle. You know, that we try and snort it, we try and buy it, we try and fuck it, we try and lift it, we try and travel it. You know, we, like so many people, you know, in 2020. I don't know about in your, you know, in your circles, Steve, and particularly for you as, you know, a furloughed flight attendant. But I think many of us are missing the travel this year, the exploration and stuff. And there's that whole kind of, you know, travel angle of, like, you know, you go for a trip and find yourself. It's like, okay, that's great. Now, you know, you can still find yourself without going on the holiday, without the expense of, you know, hiking up to Machu Picchu, and, you know, finding who you are and having that revelation, you know, while watching the sunrise, you know, over some idyllic part of the world. It's like, I don't know where you are in the world, listener, and viewer, as much as it is for me here in Wellington in New Zealand, and for Steve in Denver in the US, to, you know, the sun rises where you are too. Like, and, you know, you can still have that kind of epiphany of like, okay, things feel pretty shit. I need to do something about it where you are. You don't need to go somewhere. You don't need to hit, like, yeah, particularly on that travel to find yourself a bit. I derailed then. I went on a bit of a thought of consciousness.
I think travel can show you different ways of living, though, and change your perspective and broaden your horizons and your mind, which are all beneficial. But being trapped inside for 9 months, you can also watch some pretty documentaries and realize, holy shit, people in India like that, or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think, you know, travel can be numbing. Like when you go to travel to avoid home, that's akin to travel to avoiding who you are.
Are you traveling to somewhere, or are you traveling from something?
Exactly. That's such a good point. Yeah. And I think, Steve, there was something that you said a few minutes ago about the getting, you know, the getting into action, and the figuring out of like, you know, what to do. And you've said a couple of times, and I know you say this through your work, it's just like, okay, what's the goal? You know, and, you know, making a decision that will either get you to that goal or further away from that goal. Like, what's it going to be? You know, at every choice, like, there's this take a step forward or a step away.
Mm-hmm.
And the word that you used there was, you know, who do you want to be? And I just want to come back to that, because I'm not quite sure, for me at least, in when it comes to loneliness, that rather than who do you want to be, I think we might, it would serve us better to say, who are you? And take steps to answer that question, not who do you want to be, because that could be a perpetuation of putting on masks.
So in my little addled brain this afternoon, I see what you're saying. What I meant by who do you want to be? I guess what I meant by that, how I saw it in my head was, you edit this, right? So I don't look crazy, right? So instead of saying, here's how I am right now, how do I, and here's the authentic me, how do I get to that?
Yeah.
I just use the term, who do you want to be, instead of how do I make steps towards becoming my authentic self, I guess.
Yeah, no, and that was, and that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. If, you know, getting to the goal with loneliness, I strongly contend, is actually getting back to you. Coming back to
I didn't
ourselves.
mean it to be like, I didn't mean it to be like, who do you want to be? Like, Dolly Parton. Okay, let's work on it. No, that's not what I meant.
Although we all could be a little Dolly, you know, being 9 to 5 and, you know, tapping away at a typewriter and stuff. But
so I think she's one of the most real, authentic, fake people. She's so genuine in her, like, over the top fakeness, right? But she's so down to earth and genuine. The coach I work with, actually, we come up with, you know, when you're faced with something, we've come up with, what would Dolly do? Like, WWDD, like, what would her authentic person that she is do? Like, how do you, what would Dolly do? What's the most authentic thing you can do in this situation?
Love it. And that's I feel like another promo there, WWDD. And one of the things that I wanted to add here at this point in you know, beginning to again, you know, putting on the gumboots, the waders, whatever it is, and going through the swamp, going through your loneliness. We can't, try as we may, we can't do it alone. And there's been a whole lot of content through 2020 on my podcast and in my blog about how we need to be brave, we need to be courageous, and the purpose of loneliness, in engaging with loneliness, well, we need to be brave and courageous to engage with the thoughts and feelings of loneliness and accept them. And then we need to continue to be brave and courageous when we work through our loneliness. when we make the decision to work through it. And loneliness, when it comes like tin tacks, brass tacks, like absolute fundamentals, is all about, it's telling you that you need connection in your life. That's all loneliness is. Everything that we build on beyond that is a story. And, you know, we're projecting ourselves onto that feeling. We're giving interpretations. Stripping it all back, it's simply just about getting connection. And to do that, to get connection, you need someone. You need others. And that's the scary thing, that requires us to be vulnerable. And vulnerability sounds awesome, and we respond to vulnerability. We think it's wonderful and inspiring, but when it comes to doing it ourselves, we deny ourselves our own vulnerability. Yeah, right. And then we end up doing everything to avoid being vulnerable. We snort it, we fuck it, we travel it, we, you know, work it, we lift it, whatever it is. Buy it, yeah. And yeah, but what we do need, we need others. We need others. And that is the beautiful irony of loneliness. It's delicious in its irony. We have our loneliness, but we'll go through it alone. And in not going through it alone, we get the connection that we need.
So I don't know, something in what you just said reminded me of this. And I know we chatted a little bit before we got on this call, and I don't know how to pronounce his name. The guy from the University of Chicago, John
Cacioppo,
I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to dealing with loneliness, so he said, hunger, it means our blood sugar is low. Thirst, we might be a little dehydrated. Pain, there's potential for tissue damage. Loneliness, we need social connection. And he says denying that you feel lonely makes no more sense than denying that you feel hungry.
Yep.
And that's what you were just saying a minute ago, that loneliness just means it's signaling to you that you need something, and it's that you need connection. And then again, going back to what you said in the piece you wrote for me, it has to be, for it to matter, for it to actually start to change the loneliness, that connection needs to be authentic. Because again, I have connection with 500 people a day when I'm flying, but that doesn't mean I'm not lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because none of those connections amount to anything. They're authentic in what they are, but
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm going to say, as someone who has sat on a plane, not worked on a plane, I've sat on many planes in my time, and
sure.
but it is that you know, there is a choice. There is a choice when like, and I'm thinking specifically, like I lived in Seoul, and my job had me responsible for South Korea and Japan. And so over 3 years, I did 20 trips to Tokyo. And there was a couple of times where I would leave for the airport and forget my passport because I forgot. Like, it just felt like flying from like Canberra to Brisbane for a work trip. It was the same distance, same length of flight or whatever. And I'd get like a couple of subway stops away. I'm like, shit, need to get off, come back, get my passport. And because I'm flying internationally, what becomes our normal is sometimes a bit weird when we say it aloud. But for a few times there, like each time I would fly Japan Airlines, right? And this is a very long story, I'm sorry. But I'm intolerant, not necessarily allergic in like the anaphylactic way, but to clams, oysters, mussels, those kind of like shell things. Prawns I'm okay with, but like, you know, those kind of things. Everywhere in Korean cooking, everywhere in Japanese cooking, there's a clam. generally, and it's used as kind of like a stock, particularly in soups. And oftentimes, like I could be eating miso, like drinking miso soup, and it's got a clam in it or whatever. I'm like, oh God, that's going to be uncomfortable in a little while, and stuff. So anyway, like I was sick of getting meals on my plane, on my flights, and I couldn't tell if there was a clam or if it had been prepared with a clam. And I remember asking flight attendants, has this been? And like, oh, don't know, sorry. So I'd eat stuff out of packets that I like and denying myself the experience. Did a little bit of research and I realized that like kosher meals are like completely devoid, obviously, for kosher reasons, of mussels and clams and oysters and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, right, that's it. A way to connect with Japan Airlines flight attendants is to order a kosher meal, because there's not a huge Jewish population in Japan. And it was a very interesting, like I had the best conversations on some flights back to Australia, flights to and from Japan, when I was ordering kosher meals, because it was so completely strange. And I'm sure that like a few years on now, those flight attendants, if they're still flying and still with the airline, are remembering some guy with a beard who was Australian, who was ordering these kosher meals, because I actually would like go to the galley, have a bit of a chat with them, and it was an opportunity to connect. And they weren't just bringing me something. And I'm sure, Steve, you're thinking right now of those opportunities, like when someone came and asked you for help, or you had to give help, and it was an opportunity to actually see that person, be with that person, to feel that connection beyond the mere interaction. And the whole point of that story, thank you for bearing with me, listener, viewer, and Steve, is that when we choose to be more present in a situation, we can use that as an opportunity to connect. So it can turn from, drink, can I get you a soft drink, coffee, tea, pretzels, into an opportunity to actually spend a few moments and being there with someone.
It's not, I think that's not something you can do with every passenger on the plane, and not everyone wants it, but that was always sort of my goal, was to connect with at least one person on each flight, if not like a row of ladies who are traveling somewhere to celebrate something or whatever it is. Once you find out what it is, people want to talk about their shit. And I remember one time we were flying from Chicago to Seattle, and it was some of the worst turbulence that I've ever had. We were seated most of the flight, and there was a woman, I was facing the cabin, and there was a woman about 3 rows into the cabin in the middle seat, just terrified, just crying. And I was like, I've got to like connect with her somehow. And I went and talked to her when we were able to get up, and it was very interesting to actually be able to be that person for someone, to have an authentic experience like that on the plane. I would sneak her gummy bears and sneak her Kleenex so that not everyone around knew that she was terrified. And my God, the thanks that she gave me when she got off that flight, whatever, I don't know. This is probably not even relevant to this conversation, but
No. Well, I'm saying, hi, I'm allergic to clams and mussels. I think I opened the space there. But it is, see, like it's such a pertinent example. It's such a pertinent example.
So in that moment, she didn't feel lonely. Like you were saying earlier, she felt seen and heard and acknowledged.
Yep.
And that for that 2-3 hour flight, whatever it is, maybe she didn't feel completely alone in that plane full of people, because there was one person who was hearing her and paying attention to what it was she needed.
Yep. And I want to come back to another point that completely resonated with me. Like, you know, on a, you know, 120, 150 passengers on a plane, you don't need to connect with every single one. It's like you connect with you know, someone, and you know, that row of ladies going to Vegas for a weekend, or you know, whoever it is, whatever it is, like you connecting with someone, and that to me, and even through my work at the Loneliness Guy, you know, when I do get messages from you, my audience, saying that this is really, you know, thank you so much, like that, I love that. I love that, because it does, you know, it is a weird thing, like speaking like this, or writing and things, and knowing that this is connecting with someone on a level, and then hearing it back. It's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing, and I hope that others get the warm fuzzies that I do from that moment of connection. And there is something, and knowing that we have to wind this up, but in doing the loneliness, in working through your loneliness, I would love it if you would consider becoming a premium subscriber of the Loneliness Guy for $9.95 Australian dollars a month, which is about $6.50 US a month. Coming and becoming a premium subscriber of the Loneliness Guy. And with that, you get access to a private Facebook group, or a group on Facebook that is private. And we just chat, and like I you know, engage with the members in a more real way, and it's a safe space online where we can engage with the thoughts and feelings and celebrate, as Steve said, those little wins. You know, I was feeling lonely, and you know, just picked up the phone and called someone, didn't make a time, and they were thrilled, and that I called, and I was thrilled that I called as well, etc. Those little wins are celebrated. The frustrations are shared, and connection happens in that little group. And viewer, listener, especially if you are a frequent consumer of my work, I would love for you to take the next step. The invitation is always there for you to take the next step and to begin in a more active way to work through those thoughts and feelings of loneliness, getting the support that you need. And I know that you would give the support to others as they work through the thoughts and feelings of their loneliness too. So that's the standing invitation there. Steve, how are you going to be spending Christmas this year?
Can we take a quick time out?
Okay. All right. Hold on. All right. That's all right. Okay, Steve. So how are you going to be spending this Christmas?
Honestly, I haven't given it that much thought. This will be one of the first Christmases that I'm actually not working. Like, usually holidays for me means I'm working. I don't have to think about how I'm going to show up to the holidays with high expectations and whatever, all of that stuff. My dad and my brother live about 4 hours west of me. So most likely I will probably take a little road trip out there, have a little dinner. Dad lives near a ski resort. Maybe I'll try to get in a couple of runs on the slopes, but very low key.
Yeah. Oh, good. And one thing that I had Christmas carols on yesterday. So the kids were over, and you know, we had some carols going. And particularly this year, I don't know about you, Steve, but for me, there's always like a Christmas carol of the year. And about, you know, a few years ago, I was in Hawaii, and late November, early December, and you know, we're there for Thanksgiving, which I think is an awesome holiday, and you know, anything that's about food and bringing people together, like, count me in. But And then obviously, you know, being the US, like soon as Thanksgiving's done, Christmas happens. But yeah, like everywhere in Hawaii was Mele Kalikimaka as like the carol everywhere. So I'm like, and so Mele Kalikimaka became like the Christmas carol of the year. And then a few years earlier, like, I don't know, there was like, anyway, there's usually like a one Christmas carol that becomes like that one for the year. And for me, I was sort of being listening, being aware of it and what it's going to be. And yesterday I was getting something ready, and Judy Garland's version of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas came on. And I don't know, normally I'm like, that probably makes me a bad gay. Judy Garland's like, come on, speed it up, Judy. Like, let's get it done. But there was something about it that I started actually really listening to it. And there's that line in there, the lyric, you know, through the years, what is it?
Through the years, we ought to be together.
Yeah, and someday soon we all will be together if the fates allow. Until then,
goosebumps.
Yeah, right. It's so apt for 2020. If the fates allow, until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. So have yourself a merry little Christmas now. So Judy,
how did you make me cry in this interview? Oh my God.
Good. All right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's so perfect for this messed up year. Yeah.
And you know, if the fates allow, but someday soon we will all be together. As always, if the fates allow. And until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. So, Steve, listener, viewer, if you celebrate Christmas, wherever you are in the world, let's muddle through somehow until we can all be together and work back towards our new normal. So, Steve, thank you so much. I didn't mean to make you cry at the end there.
Right at the end. Well, at least I didn't go through the whole interview with my eyes puffy and red. So at least there's that. Thank you very much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Before I wrap it up, like, and say goodbye. So, Steve, how can people find you? There is going to be a link in the episode description, as there is in the blog post. But how can people find you and your awesome work?
So you can follow me on Instagram at, what is my Instagram? Steve Seidel Wellness.
Yep.
I have a Facebook page along the same lines that you can also follow. It's Steve Seidel Wellness. But honestly, what I'm discovering is I connect and people connect with me better just through my normal Facebook page, which is Steven C. Seidel, I believe. And then my website is stevenseidel.com. And that sort of gives you an overview of who I am and what I do and how to get a hold of me. So
yeah, and listener, viewer, if you're not following already, he does lots of really great thought-provoking content that I get a lot of value from already, and always makes me think, good for a laugh, and makes me not feel like I am such alone in my coffee feedness.
And don't forget, every once in a while, there's shirtless coffee pics too. So if you get nothing more out of it than that.
and listener, viewer, he's fit. Let's just say that. It always manages to go, for me.
I'm just trying to stop this. I'm trying to stop the scroll a little bit is all I'm trying to do with that. So
right. I hear you. Stop for the image, stay for the message. And
Yeah.
the message is always good. So Steve, thank you so much. It's a joy in my work to be able to meet and interact and get to know people like you and connect with people like you. And it's an honor to introduce my audience to you and you to my audience. So thank you so much for joining me for coffee.
Thank you very much for having me. I feel just close to you in Denver as I did when I was just a lot closer to you living in Guam, but
I don't. You've ducked over the bad side of the date line.
I know. I remember talking to you on the phone when we were both in the same day, but not anymore.
I know. Get back over this side.
But thank you very much for having me, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you so much. Let's muddle through somehow, right?
We'll get there somehow.
All right. So, listener, as we say goodbye to Steve, I want to say Merry Christmas to you, and I hope that you stay well, stay safe, and are kind. And I say be kind to yourself and to those around you as you experience Christmas this year. Thank you so much, and I will see you in 2021. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Ooh, hold on.